Okay, go ahead.
This is sort of a general observation, is that insofar as the questions of the future of social technology and networking go, do you feel that this presentation was a little tech heavy? Because there was very little introspection or discussion about like the social side here, because we talked about the technologies that are coming, the possible trends in technology, but we didn't necessarily talk about like how the technology, say Project Natal, changes the demographics of the gamers, how a natural language processing interface in a global network, if we have automatic translation, does that break down cultural barriers? And if we have a global culture, how does the feedback or the change in the demographics of the users, the way the societies react to the technology changes the technology, which changes the way the societies react to the technology. So shouldn't we have a bit more of the social aspect and not just the technological aspect if we're going to address the issues of the future of social technology?
Would you like us to riff on the social stuff right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of the purpose, right?
One thing that occurs to me, since I talked about virtual reality a bit in my talk, one of my favorite novels is by Richard Powers. It's called Plowing the Dark. It is a novel about virtual reality written in 2000, back when virtual reality was still hypeful. One thesis that he sort of put forward is that as population is exploding on the Earth, and we're all sort of getting pressed into smaller and smaller spaces, these devices are enabling us to not really feel the claustrophobia as badly. I think Robert Heinlein once said that all wars ultimately are due to population pressure. I think virtual reality and our machines could be sort of what saves us and allows us to continue increasing population so exponentially. The other alternative is some kind of catastrophe where billions of people die. So there's my social take on virtual reality. I think it could be very important.
My quick take is, I'm going to hyper simplify, is everything's allowing us to iterate faster. And I'll take a simple example, like you have your mobile device. If it's got email on it, just 7-8 years ago, a study found that if you use email on your mobile phone, you get 55 minutes more productivity a day. And then you go over to what John was talking about, and you're just going to iterate even faster. So my ability to communicate with people prior to social networks, my ability to actually have conversation, what we call intimate, what was it called, sort of vague intimacy. I forget what the term is. You know what I'm talking about? Something general, it's augmented, not augmented, but the ability that I can have this intimate relationship with thousands of people through social networks, and yet when I run into you, we met once before and I run into you again, instead of starting with, oh, how you doing, what's going on, and then sort of going through a long history, you had been following me on Twitter and Facebook, so you're caught up. So it's the ability to iterate faster, and all this is our normal interactions faster, and he's even showed at even a faster rate what we're going to see.
I think that's a wonderful question and concept you're asking there, and you know, in science and technology and society.
Ambient intimacy. Sorry, just remember.
Yeah. In science and technology and society studies, which is now a field, STS, with about 50 places in the United States where you can get a master's or a PhD in it. Actually, you can get a bachelor's in it now too, at a few universities. They basically say, well, there's the social construction of technology, which is the theory that humans in our society and culture constructs it. And then there's this developmentalist argument that says, well, certain things emerge and then all society basically responds to them and gets crafted by them, obviously being the internet and internal combustion engines, et cetera. And I think we really have to mix those two together. I think the social construction is the evolutionary argument, and I think it's 95% of the case. And then there's this developmentalist argument, which is a few special things. And one of the dialogues with regard to the social issues that I find most important to discuss, which we don't discuss enough, is this balance between social and technological forces for innovation and social and technological forces for sustainability. And the sustainability concept hasn't really come up here, but you can't talk about a culture that's innovative without also saying that it's sustainable. And there is no sustainable culture that isn't also innovative. So you have to mix those two. Cultures that go too far to one side or the other fall by the wayside. We can give good examples of that. And I think that's a really great question for the future, is how do we make sure our technologies increase social sustainability, planetary sustainability, the so-called triple bottom line, where all of our corporations are improving not only giving us financial benefits, they're giving us measurable environmental benefits and social benefits. And I think the Europeans are doing a great job making sure that environmental benefits are also accounted for by the corporations over there. They may be 10 years ahead of us with that. Nobody is accounting for social benefits of corporations yet. But all the things we've been discussing gives the framework for quantifying that so that they can be accounted for in the future. So I am optimistic that the issues you care about in that question are going to be much more front and center in a world where we've quantified a lot of that information, the things we care about, and we have a semantic tool that allows us to assign measures to those things.
Okay, I think you were the next one up, so why don't you go ahead?
So there's a concept that wasn't explicitly discussed tonight that I'm kind of curious to see what you all think about, and that is Second Life. And is this something that's transitional, or is this going to have a significant impact on where we go, both with technology and as a society in the future?
I mean, Second Life has accomplished a lot because it's the first virtual world that actually does matter and does have a critical mass. But it has not quite exploded and become mainstream. I mean, Facebook and Second Life first started to get on people's radar screens at the same time. And Facebook has hundreds of millions of people using that. And Second Life, it's still a fairly small group of passionate people. But I think Second Life in some ways has an impact that's not at all about the fancy 3D graphics. Virtual currency first started to become popular in Second Life. People started to be willing to pay actual money for virtual goods. That's becoming significant. Things like Farmville are being successful as businesses, partially because people are willing to pay for stuff. Second Life is a real community, and even though the graphics of Second Life have not had that huge an impact, I think you have seen Twitter and Facebook and everything else sort of carry on that idea. I know one challenge Second Life traditionally had and probably still has is that technically it's been somewhat demanding on computers and somewhat tough to set up and somewhat hard to use, and there's been a high learning curve. And if there is sort of a virtual world beyond Second Life that matters, it might be one that's just easier for people to dive into.
Two quick examples of, I've been very negative on Second Life actually for a very long time, and I actually had someone who was very passionate about Second Life. I said, please, I'm dying to be proven that I'm wrong. And he actually showed me two examples of how something in Second Life, because my feeling is the only reason any technology or social media thing that works is it does something better than we're currently doing, or doing something that we couldn't physically do before. The two examples are, there's an architectural wiki on Second Life. When could you do an architectural wiki anywhere but in a virtual environment? So that's one. So the fact that people can play and build structures in a sort of collaborative way was great. And the other that I thought was interesting was the experiencing schizophrenia on Second Life. The schizophrenia, some type of organization, nonprofit, created a schizophrenic thing where you put on a badge as you enter the space, and you start experiencing what it's like to be a schizophrenic. And it's a really disturbing experience while you're in the game. And from that, had a better understanding of what schizophrenia was. I had heard about it, read definitions of it, but being able to experience it as a first-person experience, so I think the only way that virtual worlds like that are going to work is if you can give an experience that is not physically possible. The whole thing where a company just sets up, hey, you know, HP, come to our virtual space and converse with us. Come here instead, you know. That's my attitude. So it's got to be a new experience.
Well, I did this metaverse roadmap, which was funded by a couple of the virtual worlds companies, and we looked out 10 years ahead, and I think we did find some of the very exciting uses things you can only do in virtual space. And I do believe that this virtual physical, I don't like to use the word real because virtual is just as real, digital is just as real. I believe this virtual physical fusion is just going to get tighter and more intimate, and there'll be more and more reasons that we'll go into these worlds. We'll be directed to go into them for specific purposes, for specific serious games, for specific collaboration events that'll maybe be more economically efficient if they're crafted for particular ends, curated. Right? And we already see people in Second Life who are marginalized socially. You see people who don't actually have social groups, and they don't spend enough time in social space. And Second Life is a cartoon of socialization and social interaction. But even a cartoon today, with today's technology, is better than nothing. And so we see serious advances people are making with these technologies. As the next generations of these technologies come online, we're going to use them a lot more valuably. And I think social networks pretty much are going to be the glue that we're going to stay. That's why Facebook is so amazing. You know, it's blown up so quickly in Farmville, all the things around it, because we go into these experiences for short whiles and then we come back and we're in the comfortable environment of our friends and our friends' preferences and interests. And so I think that's a developmental thing, like I was mentioning earlier, and I think we're going to see a lot more value come out of the virtual worlds.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I think we've got time for 2 more questions. So you are up next, and then you'll be our last one. I just wanted to say that the speakers will be available afterwards, so in case anybody has any other questions that we haven't had a chance to get to, they will be around. But with that, go ahead.
What if you don't want to spend all your time or most of your time with technology? Are you now condemned to poor employment choices? For example, my passion is gardening, not gardening websites. I want to interact with dirt. What do I do?
So can I just ask you one question? When you're learning about gardening or talking about gardening with fellow gardeners, I mean, do you have more interaction about gardening beyond physically being in the dirt? I mean, what's your experience with it beyond that?
I mostly am in the dirt. I also talk with neighbors who garden. I work with a creek restoration group, which involves dirt and plants.
Is this your business?
No. This is my life.
Well, then there's no reason
I
you
know,
have to.
but you have all described a world where unless you spend your time blogging, you can't get a job. I want a job for a small amount of my time. I want to interact with technology as necessary to do the work necessary on that job, but it is not what I want to do with the rest of my time.
Let me present a question to you. So you remember Andy Warhol's statement, we're all going to be famous for 15 minutes, right? I think what these social networks and this early semantic web allows is a world where we're all famous to 15 people. And the 15 people that most have the same values that you do, that are most interested in the kind of gardening that you do, under the conditions that you do it, with the values that you profess, I don't know whether you want to meet those people or not. But the ability to meet those people and to actually have them pay you just to talk to them about the kind of gardening you do.
Or I can just talk to my neighbors.
Right, but those people that care the most about what you do and your values, those people are going to be accessible to you and they'll be able to pay you just to talk to them in that kind of a world, if this model is true. So I don't know if that is something you want, but everyone will have the ability, if all you want to do is sing to babies, the kind of baby singing that you do in 2020, 2030, being able to find those people who do that and do that with them, I think that's going to be mediated by these kinds of technologies. So I think that cultural diversity is just going to go up. It's not going to go down. There's going to be a lot more people who want to live by their terms. And what Mark Weiser says is any good technology needs to become invisible. And if you want your technology to become invisible and fade in the background, I think it should do that for you.
No answers, right?
I think there are, I think there are things, as much as I love technology, there are things we're losing. I love to draw and paint, and a pencil is a far, far greater invention than Photoshop ever will be. And to be quite honest, I've lost something because I don't spend as much time with real-world art media as I once did, and I hope that people never lose sight of that, because the real world is way more interesting the physical world is way more interesting than the virtual world in a lot of ways, as fascinating as the virtual world is.
You're not required to do anything.
Yeah.
We're just
Well, no,
offering.
that's not true, actually. You said you have to blog and compete on blogs to get a job. You actually specifically said that.
I said you have to engage. So an engagement could be, say, let me ask you, everything you plant, does it grow, or do some things fail?
Oh, a lot of things fail.
And do
It's the
you
nature
talk
of
to
planting.
a neighbor when something fails? Like, how'd you get this working? I couldn't get it working, or
Sometimes, yeah.
something like that?
Right.
So these are things you could do, that you could find someone who is an expert on it and engage, and that's your point of connection. And now you're building a relationship with that person. And that could grow to something more fruitful for you down the line. That's it. You don't have to start a blog. You could just need to engage. You need to show that you have a passion and an interest. And you showed, just standing up here, that you have a passion to garden.
But you
Oh, okay,
said
can
I
I-
have to
I'm
do
gonna-
that to get a
We
job.
have to.
I'm going to need to jump in right now.
Let me just
Hold on.
ask one response. Okay, there is
Yeah.
a phrase the futurists use called structural violence, and I think it gets to the root of your question. We never want to live in a society where the structure of the society does violence to our livelihood, to our desires, to our interests. Johann Galtung came up with this phrase, structural violence. And the key question is, will you be able to have a livelihood with the kinds of things that you care about and do in a world where machines can do just about everything you want? As long as you still have the vote in 2020, or 2030, 2040, then my feeling is, yes, you'll be able to keep raising the social safety nets, voting up those things that you care about. And we see this happening in countries like Germany and Europe. And if you look more closely at those countries, they're much more tied in to the physical things we've been discussing in a lot of ways than we are. And they have much higher social safety nets. And a country like Germany has not lost its manufacturing base at all. So it has a very, very strong democracy. And I believe that if that's what you care about, you'll be able to see more of those opportunities for our democracy to grow stronger and make sure that structural violence doesn't happen to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as I said, the speakers are available if you want to continue in a few minutes. We had one last question over here.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I guess the tagline to what she was saying, which is the reason I stood up here, was personal security. What if I don't want to put my stuff out there? What if I don't want 15 people to know me? Just like she wants to play in the dirt, I might want to very, very highly limit what I can put out there and not have the authorities, whatever that may be defined as, have that information beyond whatever I want to release. Comments, please.
Well, it's a brilliant question, and it's one area where I'm actually not very optimistic that our privacy is going to be protected early. I think we may be able to reclaim more of it later, but I think because these technologies are more and more powerful going forward, and because we're able to use that as a pretext for making things more transparent, they become more transparent than they should, earlier than they should. And however, again, you can look at other countries, do comparative analysis, one of the important things futurists do, and you can see, like Germany, for example, values its privacy much higher than we do. There's much less transparency, much less transparency. And I think we can improve that, but we're still going to have the issue of people worrying about what other people are doing in other people's basements with very powerful technologies. in another 20, 30 years. And because of that, we have to make sure that we build what the futurists call an immune system that's smart enough to be able to go anywhere, but it doesn't destroy things. How are we going to get there? I'm with Jamie on this. I don't have any idea how we're going to get there. It just feels like we have to do that.
It's one of the thoughts has to do with perceived value. So one of the issues, and I'm not going to go down this line, but it's like, well, why do you want this privacy? But I don't want to go down that road now. The issue is with everything we're seeing online, especially with social media, the value is so sky high, and the negativity is such a fraction of that people are willing to give up personal information. And you can just not be online. You can just not put any of your personal information online, and you can be somewhat protected if you choose not to live a digital life. But I'll give you a perfect example. People give up unbelievable personal information for the smallest things. General Mills, they own Yoplait Kids, the product brand. They did a thing where they went out to mothers who love Yoplait Kids. It's a $2, $3 product. It's a yogurt for like sub 3, 4-year-old kids. And they said, would you give us your mailing address for a coupon, a free coupon to Yoplait Kids? Thousands of mothers gave up their mailing address for $2, $3. Now, had they said, would you give us your mailing address for $3? Nobody would give their mailing address. It's about perceived value. And that is the issue, is that the increasing of the perceived value and the fraction of the danger is why this just continues to thrive. You can choose not to be a part of it, and no one will say boo.
I think a lot of people right now are doing things online which they will deeply come to regret in the years to come, probably when they're looking for jobs. And one of the lessons is you have some degree of control over this. And I think that anybody who lives their entire life online is making a mistake. There's plenty of stuff I don't particularly want the world to know about, and I try to remember to keep that stuff offline.
I can vouch for crazy people giving up all kinds of stuff. There was a popular game called MapleStory, one of these free-to-play, but you buy in-game currency with real money things. They originally, a year or two ago, they were asking for people's passport numbers to sign on to the service. And I'm like, hello, giant red flag, and yet it was already incredibly successful. They'd already gotten hundreds of thousands of people's passport numbers. It was.
All right, well, anyway, let's have a round of applause for our speakers. You guys are great. Thank you so much.